Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wal aqibatu lil muttaqeen, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulihi Muhammadin wa alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een, amma ba'd, fa'awudhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem, bismillahir rahmanir rahim. The question today is, what is the procedure or the process during the month of Ramadan if a female should begin her menses or enter a state of nifas, which is postnatal bleeding. Now, we'll take the situation where somebody is already fasting, and we'll begin with that first. So if a female is fasting, she's currently in a fasting, and she begins her menses or postnatal bleeding, which is the bleeding which starts after the delivery of the child. If she begins any of those two, immediately, according to Islamic Sharia law, her fast is void and nullified. She would need to stop fasting, and for her to remain acting or maintain a behavior which seems to suggest or look like she's fasting would also be wrong, because it is haram for somebody who is impure in that state, whether it be in a state of menstruation or a state of postnatal bleeding, to fast. And therefore, even to imitate that which is haram is also haram according to the ulama. So therefore, if somebody begins a menstruation or postnatal bleeding, they must their fast is void according to Sharia law anyway, and they shouldn't continue or behave as though they are fasting. Now, that doesn't actually mean that they should sit with big 3-course lavish meals in front of people who are fasting and make it incredibly difficult for them. But in the circumstances, they are to continue eating and things, or whatever it is that they would normally do in a day as per normal. Now, the second situation is somebody who is not fasting, obviously because they're menstruating, or they're undergoing a state of postnatal bleeding, nifas, and during that time they then finish this process. So they finish menstruating, haid, or they would finish postnatal bleeding, and let's say it's still the month of Ramadan, and let's say the fast is currently ongoing. So let's say it's Dhuhr time, it's one of the days in the month of Ramadan, and you finish menstruating, or you cease postnatal bleeding. In the circumstances, the ulama say at that time, because although you've finished, you are in a circumstance where you can obtain purity and then begin to fast, technically speaking. Of course, we know that can't actually happen, because the fast would mean you fast from dawn till dusk, and obviously because it's Zuhr time already, you've clearly missed the time at the end of Sahur to join the fast. So the ulama say in the circumstances, but because technically you are in a position to purify yourself and then begin the fast, in the circumstances, the ulama say that you should purify yourself and you should act or behave in a manner as though you were fasting. So if you would cease eating and drinking and things like this, and you would then behave in a manner as though you were fasting all the way until Maghrib time and the end time of fasting. And then from the next day, of course, because you will be in a position to do so, you would then continue fasting. Now, a point that I want to mention here, that this is something that I've had in the past, that what if you stopped menstruating or you stopped postnatal bleeding just slightly after Sahur time? So what if it was 5 minutes after? Even if it was 1 minute after, if the fast has closed and you've missed a cut-off point, then you would need to follow the instructions given in this video, and that is that you maintain an attitude and behavior as though you are fasting, because technically at that point you can purify yourself and you can continue fasting in a normal way. But because you've missed the cut-off point for that day, you won't be able to fast till the next day. But the ulama say, in terms of behavior, we should continue and act as though we are fasting until the end of that day. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the ability and the facility. وَمَا عَلَيْنَا إِلَّا الْبَلَاغُ الْمُبِينُ.